Here is the latest international news. President Moon Jae-in and his Democratic Party in South Korea have spent months declaring to stamp out what they have deemed fake news in the media. But lawmakers had to postpone a vote on a new bill this week when they pronounced a problem on which no one could agree on how to proceed. Moon's party, which controls a majority of the parliament, submitted the bill in August, treating it as one of the last major reforms of his administration before his 5-year term ends in May. The bill triggered an outcry for domestic media and international rights groups that warned it would discourage journalists from investigating corruption scandals and would have a terrifying effect on press freedoms. The proliferation of unverified news reports is not unique in South Korea, as more people consume news online, often taking what they find on social media to be truthful and reliable. The problem of misinformation has become global, deepening political divides and complicating efforts to preserve election integrity and fighting the pandemic. But the government's attempt to curb the flow of misinformation have raised questions about freedom of speech, censorship, and democratic regression. Mr. Moon said last week that the country needed a stronger measure to find the fake news and false reporting that has caused much harm to the state and individuals. He then began distancing himself from the bill after concerns were raised at home and abroad. Journalist unions in South Korea, which are usually sympathetic toward Mr. Moon's liberal government, have criticized the bill. The main conservative opposition, the People Power Party, called it a dictatorial attempt by Mr. Moon's government to muzzle unfriendly media. Domestic media and international rights groups have also spoken out against it, warning that the bill's fuzzy definition of untrue reports, harm, and malicious intent would lead to a self-censorship amongst journalists and limit the publication of unpopular and minority opinions. The National Civil Police of Guatemala on Tuesday evacuated deputies and workers who had been detained in Congress during a violent protest by retired soldiers who forcibly entered the parliamentary building and burned vehicles and some of its offices. At least 10 deputies from various benches, along with their team and the Minister of Energy and Mines, Alberto Pimentel, were released by the security forces through the main gate on the street parallel to the parking lot of the Legislative Palace, where the military veterans entered. A Semilla congressman, Samuel Perez Alvarez, told AFE that the deputies were going to enter the Congress for the plenary session when the protesters turned violent with machetes. Former combatants in the internal armed conflict requested financial compensation for their services to the Guatemalan army during the internal and armed conflict between 1960 and 1996. During the last 3 weeks, the war veterans had demonstrated on several days with roadblocks, and finally this Tuesday, they decided to take action against Congress. The initiative, requested by the veterans of the internal war, is under analysis by the Defense, Finance, and Human Rights Commissions of Congress and proposes a payment of 120,000 quetzals, approximately $15,500, for each of the ex-military or their relatives if they already died, awarded in 4 annual payments. North Korea has confirmed it successfully tested a new submarine-launched ballistic missile on Tuesday. State news outlet KCNA said the new type SLBM has many advanced guidance technologies and was launched from the same submarine 8.24 Yongun, which successfully tested North Korea's first SLBM 5 years ago. North Korea has carried out a flurry of weapons tests in recent weeks, launching what is said were hypersonic and long-range weapons. The UN prohibits it from testing ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. Ballistic missiles are considered more threatening than cruise missiles because they can carry more powerful payloads, have a longer range, and can fly faster. North Korean state media on Wednesday said its last missile had new controlling and homing technology which allowed it to move laterally. It was also capable of gliding and jumping movements. It released pictures of the missile as well. It is not mention of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, indicating that Kim was not present to supervise Pyongyang's latest missile test. A gang that kidnapped 17 members of a U.S.-based missionary group demanded $1 million ransom per person, although authorities were not clear whether the amount included 5 children being held. The official was not authorized to speak to the press, told the Associated Press that someone from the 400 Mawozo gang made the demand Saturday in a call to a leader of the ministry group shortly after the abduction. A person in contact with the organization Christian Aid Ministries confirmed that $1 million per person demand, which was first reported by the Wall Street Journal. That person spoke on condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the situation. The adults range in ages from 18 to 48, the children from 8 months to 15 years. According to a statement from the organization on Tuesday, 16 of the abductees are Americans and 1 Canadian. The group was returning from visiting an orphanage when they were abducted. In Washington, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Tuesday that the FBI was part of a coordinated U.S. government efforts to free the missionaries. The American embassy in Port-au-Prince was coordinating with local officials and the hostages' families. It is long-standing U.S. policy not to negotiate with hostage takers, and Psaki declined to discuss details of the operation. China is in the midst of a rapid expansion of its strategic and nuclear weapons system, and its progress has alarmed U.S. national security officials. The buildup described by U.S. officials and analysts is shrouded in secrecy against a backdrop of worsening U.S.-China relations marked by little communication between Beijing and Washington, the perfect recipe for destabilizing arms race, analysts say. China tested the nuclear-capable hypersonic missile back in August 2021, according to a Financial Times report. Individuals who knew about these tests revealed to the media outlet that the rocket carrying a hypersonic glide vehicle flew through low-orbit space and eventually crashed some 24 miles away from its target. U.S. intelligence officials are apparently surprised by China's hypersonic missile development. One individual admitted that they had no idea how they did it. 2 people said that the test shows the astounding progress achieved by China in the field. It was far more advanced than American officials realized. The missile test also raised questions on why Washington tends to underestimate the military modernization underway in China. The head of U.S. Strategic Command, which is responsible for the military nuclear weapons mission, declined to confirm the Financial Times report, but Charles Richard told Stars and Stripes the breathtaking expansion of strategic and nuclear capabilities means that China can now execute any possible nuclear employment strategy. Richards has referred to China's military advances as a strategic breakout. Although China is unlikely to reach nuclear parity with the United States and Russia in the foreseeable future, the buildup of silos is significant by Chinese standards. A Brazilian congressional panel is poised to recommend mass homicide charges against President Jair Bolsonaro over his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, alleging that he deliberately allowed people to die in a futile attempt to foster herd immunity. More than 600,000 people have died from COVID-19 in Brazil, the second highest death toll in the world after the U.S. Excerpts show that the report of the investigation effectively blames the policies of the Bolsonaro administration for more than half of those deaths and calls for murder charges against the president. The Brazilian president, much like other strongman leaders around the world, has repeatedly scoffed at public health recommendations and pandemic restrictions while sowing doubts about the life-saving vaccine. Bolsonaro says he is not vaccinated for the deadly virus. Should Bolsonaro be formally charged, he will be removed from the office for 180 days as the country's Supreme Court decides the case. The French government has rejected the U.S. woke culture, as the education minister warned that the left-wing ideology is what contributed to the rise of former U.S. President Trump. French education minister Jean-Michel Blanquer is leading a new government think tank, Le Laboratoire de la République, which is tasked with promoting the French brand of secularism and rejecting woke ideology, an extreme form of political correctness that focuses on societal injustices especially in racism. French secularism, on the other hand, transcends race, gender, and religion and is truly egalitarian, Politico reported. An Argentinian judge ordered on Wednesday former President Mauricio Macri to appear before him on October 28 in a probe about alleged orders to spy on relatives of 44 sailors who died in the sinking of a Navy submarine. Macri had been ordered to appear before Judge Martin Bava on Wednesday, but refused, accusing the magistrate of being prejudiced that he recused himself from the case in which the former leader is accused of ordering the country's intelligence service to spy on relatives of crew members who died when the San Juan sank on the high seas in November 2017. The vessel was discovered in November 2018 at a depth of 900 meters, 3,000 feet, after a year of searching with the support of navies from other nations. But Bava rejected the challenge, calling Macri's arguments manifestly inadmissible, and said his summons was prompted by an evaluative and well-founded process of the evidence. In a letter to Macri, the judge said he met none of the criteria for refusal, adding that he had no friendship, enmity, or prejudice of any kind, objective or subjective, with the accused or with the plaintiffs. I'm Joyce Grace. Please share, subscribe, and like our channel so you can help us inform more people about the latest news around the globe. Thank you for watching our video, and see you next time.